a different setup, so I'm hoping that it works. Please comment, let me know that the sound is coming through okay. You know, as I'm kind of putting together the studio, if you don't know already, we're in the garage of my house, and that's what this thing is right here. This is for where the garage door opens. And I didn't think about that when actually designing this studio. As a matter of fact, I may have to shift it over a little bit more towards this side, and I'm gonna, deck out the back so that you got some nice things to look at. But the point is that, regardless of whatever the scenery is or what have you, I think I still need to make it a point to produce content and share content that is easy to consume and easy to relate to. And so for those of you who are brand new and actually come into the FIF happens every Friday. FIF stands for Fuck It Friday, as a matter of fact. And in these episodes, what we do is we talk about the issues that we face in our daily grind, because at the end of the day, we're always going to be facing the same challenges regardless of what level you're at. And what I've learned in my climb is that depending on what level you're at, the individuals at a higher and higher level, they just handle the same exact issues in a different way, a more efficient way and a more effective way. And how they're able to do this is because they technically have so many years of experience that they can ultimately give you a shortcut if you picked apart some of the ways that they handle these same challenges that we all go through. And so nonetheless, FIF in this episode, what the topic's going to be about is window shoppers. Comment in the chat box wherever you're catching this, whether you're on Facebook or you're on Instagram or you're on YouTube. Comment below if window shoppers is something that really gets under your skin. And I want you to understand that we all face window shoppers, even if you're the top closer in the industry, top closer in your sales floor, your company, we all still face window shoppers, right? I think just depending on the level of experience that you have, you're going to handle the challenge of dealing with a window shopper much differently. And if you're coming from an inexperienced level, or at least kind of even in an intermediate level, facing a window shopper can ultimately leave you burnt out and kind of chasing your tail. And so I want to help you avoid that. And so what I'm going to talk to you about in this episode of FIF is window shopping. And so first off, I want us to understand why it affects us. And if we can first start within and understand why window shopping ultimately leaves us burnt out, is because what we do is we face a consumer that, we feel that they technically use us, right? And what will happen is we'll typically label our own consumers. We'll label our own prospects. And I know you do it. For example, if I said Mr. Patel, what's the first thing that you think of? Like a price grinder, right? And what I want you to understand is that it's just not any particular ethnicity. We can have all ethnicity and all different types of prospects, all shape and forms, all ages, all backgrounds, all income levels, cheap, even wealthy, that will still window shop and ultimately kind of leave a salesman, you and I, hanging to dry, right? And so there are a few things that we first need to understand. And number one is we need to understand the mindset of both the consumer, the prospect, as well as the actual salesman. And I believe that in any sales engagement or any sales conversation, which is where we actually encounter window shoppers, right? So anytime that we engage with a consumer who's just window shopping, we as salesmen have our own point of view and the consumer will have their own point of view. Each side, most of the time, is on guard. And the reason why they're on guard is because the consumer doesn't want to get sold and the salesman doesn't want to lose the sale. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like two opposing teams. And the real hack or the trick of this is that you need to find a way to blend the two. So you need to basically find a way to fuse your point of view with the prospect's point of view. And I would say that that's a primary challenge in dealing with a window shopper, because a window shopper, being on defense, they typically ask questions that are going to kind of allude to the fact that they're not going to buy. Does that make sense? So first off, let's understand why it affects us. Why it affects us is because we understand that our initiation of the sales process is our time. It's our valuable time. And as salesmen, we get paid based on how efficient we are with our time. In other words, we earn income that's determined by how much sales we generate. Does that make sense? So if we wasted 30 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour with this prospect who was just shopping and we never got a commitment, we feel like we wasted our time. And there's a reason for that. And I used to feel this way a lot when I just started getting into sales. And the primary reason of us feeling this way is because our motive is just to make a sale. It's just to make a transaction. And my mentor taught me a very valuable tool that changed my sales career forever. And as a matter of fact, it actually multiplied my results because my mentor was at a higher level of experience and success than I was at the time that I learned this valuable lesson. Now, before I go into that lesson, let me explain to you the mindset of the consumer. And if you understand their mindset, then you can prepare your message or your pitch or your sales conversation in a way where they feel like they're on top. So first off, to understand the consumer, we are consumers at the end of the day. The clothes that you're wearing, the car that you're driving, even the place that you lease or you own, you are a consumer to that particular product. And so why I bring this up is because, again, I'm always preaching empathy, right? And so the way you react to certain things are the same way that our consumers will react. And the reason why individuals do window shopping is because, number one, as consumers, we are addicted to spending money. Aren't we? We just love to spend it up. Some of us love to spend it up before we even get it. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's basically kind of just the trend of consumer habits, consumer buying habits. And so the reason why I want to bring this up is because when we understand the mindset of the consumer, we can understand how to revise our approach and the way we deal with that consumer. In other words, it's almost saying like, how would you want to be sold to? And if you think about that question, how we want to be sold to or what? We just want to feel like we are understood. We want to feel like we're heard. And more importantly, we want to feel like we're getting a deal. Does that make sense? So if that makes sense, comment in the chat box below, comment in the chat section if you're on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Because this is going deep. And I think that if you understand these techniques or you understand this philosophy, you too will address window shoppers much like the individuals at the higher levels that we're trying to climb to. Even myself, I'm trying to get to that highest level. Does that make sense? The point is, and the goal is to be your own boss. And that's ultimately the highest level. But going back to the mindset of the consumer, if we understand that everyone just wants to get a deal because we are kind of wired that way from things like Groupon, right, Kohl's, Amazon, and we feel like there are a plethora of options, today is what separates us from the businesses prior to the internet boom. And so the internet has kind of rigged our consumers to feel like there are a plethora of options and that they can get everything and anything for free. But what separates your product and your service and your company isn't just the price. It's not necessarily the interest rate. It's not necessarily the market. What it is, the actual variable is us. Because believe it or not, and you may even see this yourself, there are individuals on your sales floor that are outproducing you. And there's gotta be an explanation for that, right? See, oftentimes the newer sales agents will justify and kind of make up this story within our head thinking that, oh, it's because they get better leads, or oh, it's because their manager does this, or they get better pricing. And I want to tell you from personal experience, because I get those views a lot from my team or from other teams to look at my team and individuals that look at our loan officers. And one thing that they commonly think is that we get these special Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross leads. If you remember Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross leads, man, comment in the chat box below. That's a amazing yet depressing movie about sales. You know, one of the scariest movies that I think I've ever seen with regards to sales, because it shows you the real downside. But nonetheless, the common theme of the salesman within that movie is that they believed it was the leads. They believed it's because, oh, they're not qualified or they're just shopping, they're looking for the better deal. But that's a different subject in terms of how to deal with unqualified leads, and maybe we'll do that on the next FIF. But today we're talking about window shoppers. So if we can understand that our consumers are primarily looking for a deal, what does that mean? What that means is that they're protecting themselves and that they're on defense to make sure that they don't get booked by a salesman. So how do you counteract that? Well, how you counteract that is you don't come at them like a salesman. Does that make sense? So there are certain sounds and things that we could see that kind of spark these triggers. It's the triggered alert. So for example, if you're driving down the road, right? Or maybe you're driving down the freeway and you see cop lights, like a cop car behind you and the lights go off. We are triggered to be like, oh shit, right? Is that us? Or, oh no, what am I doing? You know, you sit upright, you start going into the speed limit because that's a specific trigger. The same thing happens with consumers, but instead of cop cars or cops, when they see salesmen or they hear the sound of a salesman, their alert goes up and they become on guard, right? So just like us, when we sit up straight and we go the speed limit, they also put on a facade that makes them look like they're not interested. And that's actually window shopping. But how do you take a consumer that, just like everyone else, is addicted to window shopping and you make them feel like they can't pass up your deal? I'm going to share that with you. Now, the primary way to do this is, first, you have to be a consultant. They call it consultative sales. And the reason why consultative sales works is because it's primarily about the consumer, while alluding to the fact that you're only going to serve value to them, but you got to do it in a way where you're not necessarily saying it. So I know that sounds kind of tricky and sounds like some ninja shit, but what I'm talking about is you have to come off like, hey, I'm just more or less showing you where to go. Right? You see, there's two ways to approach a sales transaction. Oftentimes, what salespeople do is they kind of, you know, it's almost they're trying too hard. So they'd be like, hey, Jim, how you doing? Hey, nice to meet you. I appreciate you taking the time to visit us today. Welcome to our store. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to help you, right? That sets off alerts. That's more or less like the cop car that's flaring the sirens right behind you, and it kind of puts you on guard, right? But if you come across someone who's more of a consultative approach, what they'll do is more or less come up to you like they're just, you know, they're a normal person, right? Like they're like that person that they're approaching. So a consultative approach may be like, hey, how you doing? My name's Daniel. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. There are a couple interesting things that you should know about. I'll be walking around the area if you need anything, okay? And so what you're doing is you're not being aggressive, you're not being a bugaboo, but what you're doing is you're just simply dropping seeds. So you're first putting a name with a face. So now you are no longer a stranger technically in that environment or even on the phone, but also you're letting them know that they're in control. Because when a consumer comes in and they feel like they're being harassed or they feel like they're being bum rushed by salesmen, what do they naturally do? Oh no, I'm okay, I'm just looking. Does that sound familiar? And just like consumers, we say the same shit, don't we? Man, comment in the comment box if you understand what I'm saying. So next time you go to a store, I want you to understand how you react to these alerts and these triggers, because what they do is they turn you into a window shopper. Now, everyone's addicted to window shopping. My ethnicity is addicted to window shopping. I know this for sure. There's always that Filipino that's, you ever go to like the mall or, you know, like they used to be really popular with indoor malls where they would have the brand new car. Like it might be like a Toyota Camry. And then, you know, all you had to do was fill out, like you could win it in a sweepstakes. And so what you do is you give them your name, your phone number, and your email. All they're doing is gathering data. But a lot of consumers really believe that they have a chance to win that car for free. So they'll fill out that little slip with their name, their phone number, their email, and then submit it. And the next thing you know, that information is being sold to everyone. Does that make sense? But it's because the idea is that they can get the best deal. What's a better deal than free? But nonetheless, people are addicted to window shopping. It's just not Mr. Patel. Man, if it literally is any ethnicity. And the reason why I say my ethnicity is most popular about it is because I always see a gang of Filipinos, you know, wrapped around that car as being the prize. And they're always kind of like shopping it, you know what I mean? Like, is this worth my, they'd be like, is this worth my time? What is this? What is this Toyota Camry? Right? If you know a Filipino in your life, man, you know that accent. But that's what they do, and it used to trip me out all the time because they were literally shopping that thing hard and trying to justify whether or not it's a good car. Like, boo-boo, this isn't even a car lot. Why are you, you know what I mean, eyeing that car, reading the specs on it? Like, are you gonna get the car? Are you gonna buy the car? Because the reason why consumers do that is because we're just addicted to looking. We're addicted to the idea of saying, hey, what if this was my car? What if this was my thing? And so if consumers are thinking like that, we have to attach our message to that. Does that make sense? So first off, there's an order to it. Because at the end of the day, you're always gonna run into window shoppers, and the last thing you wanna do is have a window shopper not turn into a client. However, I can guarantee you that there is a way to make a window shopper your client. You just have to handle the engagement correctly. And so if I know that a window shopper doesn't want to be harassed, because then they'll solidify that they're just looking, and now that kind of completely shuts off the barrier of me being able to approach this person, right? Oh no, I'm just looking. Well, damn, how do I come back at that? Because if I come back at that, then it feels like I'm bugging them, right? So, but at the end of the day, I know that they are window shopping, so they're thinking. It's at least an idea. And that's all you need from your consumer is that they just need to be in that imaginative state where their imagination is almost experiencing the perks and the feeling of your services. Make sense? So the reason why these Filipinos be looking at this car like, what is this miles per minute? Miles per minute? You mean miles per gallon? What is this miles per gallon? Right? Like they're window shopping the damn free car. It's free, but we'll just give you shit, give you free information and submit it and you might be able to win. But the reason why they're doing that is because they're imagining if they're buying it. So that's just to explain to you that window shoppers are literally kind of buying it in their head. That's why, right? So next time you window shop or next time you stop into a store just to look around, what do? You look at the product or you look at the service and you imagine owning it. That's about the lowest hanging fruit as possible. But as salesmen, we feel like there's this fact about window shoppers that they will never buy, when that is far from the case. And so let me give you an example. How I typically approach window shoppers is I let them know that I'm aware that they're comparing. I let them know that number one is I won't even attempt to sell you or offer you anything unless I know I can help you. And that helps disarm the guard of a window shopper. Because in other words, I'm just letting them shop. Does that make sense? So second is I understand that everyone, not just window shoppers, are looking for a deal. And so I'll use my creativity to make believe or at least illustrate the story of a special. There's always a special, right? There's always something like, hey, you know what area do you live in? You live in Orange County? Okay, you know what? Let me ask my manager. I think we got a special for any residents in Orange County. That's just an example, right? But because you make it specific to them, the window shopper feels what? They feel like they're in the right place at the right time. They feel like they're getting the best possible deal and they're not overpaying for your product or your service. Does that make sense? Now, some of us, we price our deals. I know I price my deals, my team prices our deals, my entire company prices our deals. And our price is typically determined by the market, right? And so for those of you who are loan officers, and I'm going to give you a good example, and you could use this today to actually earn a sale or two and change the way you deal with window shoppers. So I want to give you an example. So when we look at a rate sheet, we have typically what? We have par, which is no rebate, no lender credit, no discount points or no points, right? And then you have the lower interest rate, which typically requires discount points, which ultimately we believe increases the cost. And then we have the interest rate with lender credit, which is the free service that we know everyone wants. But the problem is though, is that typically that free service or the interest rate with enough rebate, which is lender credit, that wipes out the closing cost to make it free because Mr. Patel only wants free service, is higher than the interest rate that he's asking for. Does that make sense? So the whole goal is to understand the leverage that you have. And the leverage that you have is only you understand what the price is. Only you understand kind of that buffer of what exceptions you could possibly get. Now, because you know this is why enthusiasm is so important when coming through on your delivery pitch or your message. Because the enthusiasm needs to kind of illuminate the idea that, man, you're getting a fucking awesome deal right now. It needs to come out, it needs to seep through your pores that they better not pass it up. But you got to balance it out to where you're not giving yourself away, right? So if I can make Mr. Patel, Mr. Window Shopper 2019, feel that he's getting the best deal, he's getting something exclusive, and he's getting something that he can only get from me, even though I sell something about as common as water, right? What I sell is money. What I sell, and again, that's just perception, and a lot of loan officers don't look at it that way. A lot of loan officers just look at it as I'm selling rate and payments. I'm selling rate and fees, because we are convinced as salesmen that we have a chance of losing this person if they go talk to the neighborhood broker, or they go talk to my competitor who has lower rates and lower fees. So it's in our mindset, in our delivery, that taints our enthusiasm, and thus our message and our pitch becomes kind of watered down. Because inside of our head, we're thinking about, oh man, Mr. Patel is going to shop me. And so now we're becoming we're going on defense. We may not realize it, but our words, our approach, and our demeanor and our body language is on full defense. Because inside our own thoughts, it's our insecurities knowing that there's a cheaper price elsewhere, there's a lower rate elsewhere. The reason why it affects you is because all you're focused on is making that transaction. You're not making Mr. Patel feel like he's the one walking away with a deal that he can't pass up. So going back to the pricing, if for whatever reason, Mr. Patel, let's say for example, asked for 4.25 free costs, right? Like no cost. I want enough lender credit. Let's say the lender credit was $3,000 or $4,000, wherever Mr. Patel lives. And I priced out my deal. And let's say my manager, let's say he approves 4.75. That's damn near half a point higher than that 4.25, right? And I know Mr. Patel doesn't want a 4.75 because he literally said it's got to beat my current rate. And his current rate, let's say, is 4.5. But again, Mr. Patel's looking for a free service. He's looking for no costs, right? And so we sometimes take it too literally. And when we realize that we can't deliver what Mr. Patel wants for free, we become defeated, and it's almost like we got to explain why we did wrong when we didn't do anything wrong. See, the idea is that if your manager approved you for no cost at 4.75, and let's say 4.25 was par, right? No lender credit, but at least it's his rate. And let's say, for example, he had to pay his own closing costs or finance it, right? How I would approach Mr. Patel is I would say, hey, Mr. Patel, based on the current market today, right now, we have a special that's going on where I can get you typically about 4.5, absolutely no cost. However, because your current interest is at 4.5, I want to show you how to get 4.25. The market today actually requires at least 1.5 discount points. So in other words, you're going to be paying 1.5% of your loan amount just to acquire that interest rate. While it might be tax deductible, and while it might be to your advantage to do so because you're buying a rate that's lower than market, I think that I have an idea. Let's do this. If I can explain to my manager how much this will benefit you, and we can show how serious you are, meaning I can first verify that you even qualify for this loan, Mr. Patel. I can show him that I have a full file and that you're ready to go. And that will give me enough leverage, Mr. Patel, to approach my manager and ask him this for no discount points. Does that make sense? So you see what happened there. So I was already approved for 4.25 at par, but I'm going to kind of illustrate the story. And sometimes this is true because your rate sheet might say something different before the pricing exception. There could very well be points. But I'm not just going right out the gate and saying, hey, Mr. Patel, my manager actually approved me for no points, no lender credit at 4.25. What do you think? No, right? I'm building up the story. I'm building up the emotion. I'm building up kind of that climax, kind of like the feeling that you get in a movie, right? Like you hear the background music playing. You're like, ooh, man, something really good is going to happen. You're kind of doing that. And so what you do is you get them into this state where they see your story. They feel your story because you're explaining it in a different way. So now what does Mr. Patel have in front of him? Mr. Patel has an opportunity to get a better deal than he perceives to be available in the market. Mr. Patel believes that he's going to avoid paying 1.5% in cost or buy down points. All along, you were already approved for 4.25 at par. Does that make sense? So comment in the chat box below, because that one subtle technique will illustrate a completely different perception that Mr. Patel or whatever window shopper you're facing needs to fill. You see, what I found is that as much as window shoppers makes us angry or mad, in my opinion, a window shopper is the lowest hanging fruit because they're already in the process or in the mindset of spending up that money. Man, I hope that helps you guys, man. So really think about that. If you understand on how to execute this method, you're going to look at window shoppers in a completely different way. No longer do you need to let them frustrate you. No longer do you need to let them, put you in this negative or defensive mindset. What you need to do is look at it and be like, yo, D explained to me on FIF that window shoppers are actually the lowest hanging fruit. Let me go ahead and play with this window shopper for a little bit and let me see what I could do. You see, the reason why individuals at the higher levels of success handle this challenge in that particular way is because they understand that they need to be most efficient with their time. And in order to be efficient with their time, they need to play chess, not checkers. You see, a lot of salesmen are always trying to play checkers. Like, hey, I got the lowest rate, I got the lowest cost, I got the lowest fees. And then when you get to know Mr. Patel and you realize, damn, maybe I don't have the lowest cost or the lowest fees, all Mr. Patel knows is you constantly saying, I got the lowest cost, I got the lowest fees, I got the lowest cost, I got the lowest fees. That's sometimes what we naturally say, and we subconsciously do it because we're trying to earn more time from Mr. Patel. But little did we know, we already planted the seeds that set up the kind of the vibe of the engagement when it comes time to pitching, because all Mr. Patel heard you say was that you got the lowest cost, lowest price, and lowest fees. So whatever Mr. Patel believes and accepts is the lowest cost and lowest fees, if your pitch does not match that, you've lost. You've completely disconnected with Mr. Patel, and he's gonna go ahead and window shop over to my shop, and I'm gonna book him. You know why? Because I understand the art of empathy. I understand how to change my prospect's perception, and I hope you learn how to do that too today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of FIF. Please don't forget to hit up that or light up that thumbs up button. Copy the link of this video and share it with someone on your team who's also having issues with getting shopped. You'll know who they are because their pipeline is very small. They're getting frustrated. Oftentimes they're burnt out and they're just burning through leads because little did they know they're just looking for the easy yes. But oftentimes the easiest sale are from those who put up the biggest guard up front. You see, a lot of salesmen focus too heavily on the back end, meaning that they'll half-ass the front end of earning rapport, making them like them, understanding the pain. They'll half-ass that, but once they get some sort of commitment, then they'll go full force on chasing them. But hey, Mr. Patel, I thought you said you were interested. Hey, Mr. Patel, it looks like we're gonna go ahead and go into processing. Are there any questions? Oh, you don't like the price. They put in a lot of time on that, but the true hack is that every sales process is the same. Origination, right? Origination, process, and then completion of sale. That's it. It's always typically that way in so many words. And what we need to do is focus more time on the front end so that we can relax on the back end. You see, if you're efficient with gaining trust, gaining rapport, making Mr. Patel like you, making Mr. Patel believe that your solution is the absolute best price, is the absolute best deal, then you're going to solidify that relationship with Mr. Patel so that you could pass the baton on to operations, move on, and go find the next one. So comment below, let me know what your favorite takeaway was in this FIF Friday, and I wish you guys a great weekend. Bye.